Shopping can be a chore for many. I know it is for me. After my spine surgery, I don't have the same stamina I once had. The idea of standing in long lines after spending God knows how long looking for the right types of outfits and then trying them on is enough to dissuade me from going to physical stores. Yet online shopping is not much better. How many times have clothes come in and not fit correctly only to be sent back afterwards? This seems especially true for women's clothing. There seem to be too many options when shopping for women's clothes, and I'm not referring to styles here. I'm referring to sizing techniques. There just isn't a one style size technique fits all method as there appears to be when it comes to men's clothes. This lack of a uniform sizing method is frustrating and stressful. Many women complain they fit in a certain size only to discover that it's not always true depending on the brand, and that size is not always found across brands. Why is this? Today I will attempt to answer this question. Hi everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am the roving educator of this and that. Together, we will explore an array of topics from history and geography to sports and cultural phenomena. No topic is too mundane or too dull to broaden our horizons. A former educator, I seek to share my expertise on a wide expanse of knowledge with those curious enough to seek new understanding or who wish to gain a little insight into the world in which we live. I yearn to create an online community of other eager enthusiasts wishing to explore from the comfort of their home. So if you like this kind of content, click that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share the video so others can find this channel as well. Now, on to the video. Centuries ago, tailors were employed to measure people who wished to buy clothing. The measurements would be body specific to the individual who had entered the shop. However, tailors began realizing that there was a negligible margin of error in measurements of the human body, negating the need for individual specific measurements and leading to the advent of mass clothing production. Certain measurements still carried over at this time though, namely horizontal torso measurements, including the neck circumference, the shoulder width, bust line measurements, waist circumference, upper hip circumference, and lower hip circumference. These measurements are typically taken for dressy garments like suits, dresses, pantsuits, and the like, as well as vertical torso measurements, including the back length from the neck to the waist, the shoulder to waist length, the bust to shoulder length, the bust to waist length, the upper hip to waist length, and the lower hip to waist length. These measurements are also typically taken for dressy garments. These types of measurements result in custom fits, so they result in pricier clothing options that we tend to wear on formal occasions. Clothing from various parts of the world fall under standards that are in effect where they originate. These standards dictate the measurements for infant clothing, toddler clothing, tween and teen clothing, women's clothing, and men's clothing, and they can vary depending on type of clothing such as outerwear versus innerwear. It should become obvious that differences between men's and women's clothing are based on body shape primarily. Men's bodies all tend to be one of 5 shapes: rectangular, triangular, inverted triangular, oval, or trapezoidal, depending on the individual torso musculature. When it comes to pants, measurements tend to be negligible between male body types. Women, on the other hand, have their shapes dependent on where their curves are arranged, and they also can be one of 5 types: apple, pear, inverted triangular, rectangular, or hourglass. These shapes affect the measurements of key areas when selecting clothing. Clothing companies tend to use mathematical formulas to determine sizes when manufacturing clothing. Wikipedia does a fantastic job of demonstrating the math for those of you curious enough. I'll link its article in the description below. Though math is universal and used in everyday life for virtually everything, it does not offer the best solution when sizing women's clothes because it does not take into account extenuating circumstances, such as the role of genetics. Multiple individuals can have the same key measurements and shape, say bust size and pear-shaped, but one is shorter, resulting in discrepancies in other measurable areas. These discrepancies result in one individual needing a smaller size than the others, though their measurements and shape are identical. But the smaller size might not fit comfortably, might be a little tight here, might be a little loose there. The larger size might not fit comfortably either because it's too loose, etc., etc. You get the point. Clothing manufacturers have tried to consider these anomalies by introducing numeric sizing for women, even numbers for adult women and odd numbers for developing younger women and girls, but these clothes most often than not come from areas where sizing standards are different. Consequently, manufacturers with the same sizes often are not the same size in reality given the differences in local standards. Unless a woman is aware of all these differences in standards, she is gambling with clothes shopping, forced to try on everything she likes to see how they fit, and ultimately to decide if the attached price tag is worth it. Numeric sizing options tend to be costlier because more options need to be made available. By contrast, alpha sizing, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, etc., allows for wider variance in fit and are cheaper to mass produce because there are fewer sizing options. It should not be shocking then to understand why many women tend to prefer their leggings or PJs more often than pantsuits or dresses when relaxing at home after work or on the weekends. However, these sizes are generic and not specific to any one measurement. The other factor to consider here is that when women's clothing, particularly pants, offer waist measurements, they might not always sit on the waist because the height of the waist can vary depending on body shape. Pant style, like low rise, hip huggers, and high rise, will have different waist measurements that will not correspond to the actual waist, but to the hip measurement instead, depending where on the leg it will rest. The length of the leg often depends on the average person, but that average person is considered arbitrary often by the manufacturer and also is dependent upon the local population where it's manufactured. For all these reasons, shopping for women's clothing can be time-consuming, stressful, expensive, and deflating. It gets discouraging for a woman to shop from store to store looking for an outfit, find one that's too pricey or sold out, learn that it is being discontinued, and return home after spending an entire day with nothing to show for it. Or for that same woman to find exactly what she wants, purchase it, return home, and argue that the price was a bargain because her male partner does not understand that women's clothes tend to be more expensive due to the many more measurements needed to be considered when manufacturing them. I'm curious what you all think. Is there a common sense solution to selecting women's clothing sizes that can be utilized by clothing companies? Tell me your thoughts below. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Please like and subscribe before you go. Until next time, I am the roving educator of this and that.